Now on 12, multiple people are injured after an explosion at a construction site in Kensington. We're going to have details from the scene. Plus, communities around the state continue to mourn the loss of an NYPD officer killed in the line of duty. This as the department releases new information on what led to that deadly shooting. And a father is arrested and charged in connection to the death of his 2-month-old baby. More on this case ahead. Thanks for joining us here on News 12 Brooklyn on this Monday evening. I'm Christy Reeder. Developing now, 3 people were taken to the hospital and dozens have been evacuated from their homes after an explosion in a residential building in Kensington. News 12 Brooklyn reporter Sabrina Franza is on the scene with the very latest for us. Sabrina?
Christy, it's still a very active scene here after a building collapsed following a fire and explosion in the basement. Take a listen to one of the individuals who say he called 911.
We saw that there was a bunch of smoke first, and then there was people yelling and shouting out saying, "Yo, help us, help us." You know, my father's inside. We heard the guy say, "My father's inside."
Officials say they got a call around 1:30 this afternoon and arrived at the scene just 3 minutes later. A fire and explosion in a 2-story residential home sent 3 people to the hospital with minor injuries. I'm told there was construction going on in the basement and that a painter and the landlord of that building were among those injured. Because of the construction, NYPD bomb squad was called to check for any suspicious material.
Made a complete investigation on it, and they determined that it was just building supplies. So there was no explosives. It had nothing to do with the explosion, which is completely separate due to some sort of construction activity in the basement.
Fire officials say they don't know the exact cause of the fire just yet, but they think it had something to do with the construction going on in the basement. Thankfully, they say no one was living in the building at that time. In Kensington, Sabrina Franza, News 12 Brooklyn. Christy.
All right, Sabrina, thank you for the update there from the scene. Well, the NYPD releasing more details this afternoon on Officer Brian Mulkeen, the officer who was shot and killed in the Bronx this weekend while patrolling around Edenwald houses. Commissioner James O'Neill calling it a tragic case of friendly fire. News 12 Brooklyn reporter Michelle Ross joins us now in studio with the latest information. Michelle?
Christy, this is now the 2nd time this year that a New York City police officer has died in the line of duty from friendly fire. And the commissioner saying today Officer Mulkeen had a long and productive career ahead of him. The commissioner also saying that Mulkeen retained his gun during the entire violent struggle with the suspect. The suspect's loaded gun was never fired, but Mulkeen fired 5 shots at him. His partners fired 10 rounds in 10 seconds, and 2 of those rounds struck him in the torso. He was a nearly 7-year veteran. At around 12:30 Sunday morning, officers were patrolling the area around Edenwald houses because of recent shootings in the area. None of the officers were in uniform, and when they questioned a man, he fled and officers chased him. That's when the violent struggle ensued and shots were fired. The commissioner says they are taking the mental health of the involved officers very seriously.
We're in the middle of a mental health crisis in the NYPD with 9 suicides year to date. So we know, and we've had the opportunity with each and every officer involved, that they'll receive counseling. The union is with them, and we'll make sure that they get through this. Because think about what they were doing too, right? They're chasing the guy with the gun.
Commissioner O'Neill adding Mulkeen made 270 arrests so far in his career. Majority were felony arrests, and a large number involved taking guns off the streets in the Bronx. Michelle Ross, News 12.
Michelle, thank you. And Officer Mulkeen's body was transported from New York City here to Orange County, where his wake and funeral will be held later this week. And that's where we find News 12's Blaze Gomez as she talks to people in the community about his impact there.
An American flag flying high, and officers stood silently in salute Monday as the body of their fallen brother, NYPD officer Brian Mulkeen, came home. That hero's homecoming captured by Chopper 12 as the police motorcade and ambulance carrying Mulkeen's flag-draped body made the miles-long trip on the thruway from Manhattan to Monroe, where Mulkeen grew up. Those who knew him lined the streets outside of Smith Seaman and Quackenbush Funeral Home to pay their respects, including this woman, his childhood school bus driver.
When you pick up these kids every day, they become your family. I'm just devastated. I'm so sad for the family.
Mulkeen was fatally shot in the Bronx Sunday while subduing a suspect on patrol with the NYPD's anti-crime unit. The 33-year-old got his law enforcement start in Tuxedo, where officers there who worked with him say he always wanted to work on the force and ultimately died living out his dream.
You don't get assigned to what he was doing. He chose that. He chose to work at night, chose to work that unit in that area. So he was doing what he wanted to do, and I believe he was happy.
Wake services for Officer Mulkeen will be held on Thursday. His funeral is planned for Friday.
And of course, keep it right here on News 12 for continuing coverage of Officer Mulkeen's death in the line of duty. Music rang loud earlier at the corner of Utica Avenue and Pacific Street to commemorate the co-naming of Pacific Street in honor of the late gospel music pioneer, Reverend Timothy Wright. The sidewalk was filled with church members, family, and local leaders. Several choirs belted his songs in tribute as crowds stood to sing. Reverend Wright founded Grace Tabernacle Center, located in Crown Heights, in the early 1990s, where he began to produce his legendary gospel numbers. His albums have charted the Billboard Top 20 list and have seen 2 Grammy nominations. Several family members shared memories alongside local leaders, including Borough President Eric Adams, that highlighted the late Reverend's impact.
And I put on the music of Pastor Wright, how he has turned it around and he has calmed the waters of so many of us. The transformative power of his music, of his voice, of his sound will always be with us.
Reverend Wright's church, Grace Tabernacle Center, has been taken over by his son, Pastor John Wright. Let's turn now to our hyperlocal forecast. Today's been kind of gloomy off and on.
Yeah, but the weekend was another beautiful day.
It was pretty nice.
Both days got into the 80s. We're a bit cooler out there at this time, and we've got additional roller coaster rides out there on the way. I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Mostly cloudy. We're looking at cool night temperatures. Our target number anyway, 61. Southeast to southwest winds 5 to 10. Now, as we take a look what's happening across the borough, we've got 67 to 68 degrees. Downtown Brooklyn, Kensington, Gravesend, and East New York. Southeast winds 10, 11 miles per hour. Fairly quiet conditions. I doubt if we're going to get any rainfall. We could use some, but nothing in the cards for tonight. There's some light showers further towards the north. Here's a warm front that will be moving across the region. That front is out to the west. High pressure moves away, and the humid and warmer air mass will be taking over, especially by midweek. If you're going to be out there this evening, pretty cloudy skies, but it looks as if we will be rain-free.
All right, Daryl, thank you. Well, 12 on transportation now. An update on the L train project. Officials saying they're ahead of schedule, and today they're moving on to the second half of the work. MTA officials say the first tunnel on the line completed includes a new cable racking system, fire-resistant cables, and stronger pumping system to prevent flooding. Originally, plans called for the L line to completely shut down, but that was avoided by engineers thinking outside the box to complete repairs. Now, as work starts on the second tube on the L line, commuters are reminded night and weekend service changes will remain. Officials are hoping the L train project will be completed by April 2020. And if you commute through Grand Central Terminal, the MTA says starting today, crews are upgrading escalators and elevators in the 42nd Street passage. They say customers should expect parts of the terminal there to be crowded, a bit more crowded than normal, especially navigating around the work. The MTA is encouraging people to use the Lexington Avenue passage instead. Salon workers and activists are rallying for safer, healthier, and more respectable working conditions in city salons. The New York Nail Salon Worker Association is launching a campaign calling for industry-wide reforms. Today, they were outside Envy Nails locations in Queens, Harlem, and the Bronx, which all have several locations. Or violations, rather. Officials were also handing out masks and gloves to show what workers need to protect themselves from chemical exposure.
We're distributing masks today for their nose so they can stop breathing the fumes and the toxic smells from the acrylic. We'll also have a pair of gloves that would also allow them to wear them so that they can get the infections and bring it home.
Advocates say issues like eye and skin condition for nail workers are caused by the lack of personal protective equipment and ventilation. An independent investigator has found the Catholic Archdiocese of New York is meeting its obligations while responding to the sexual abuse crisis. Over the last year, a former federal judge has looked into the Archdiocese after being picked by Archbishop Timothy Dolan. This comes only after a few months after two sisters who were victims of clergy abuse were awarded a settlement from the Archdiocese. The investigator says converting paper documents into a computer database is vital. Dolan noted that the church abuse survivors suffer deep wounds they may never get over. Well, just two more cases of the measles were reported last week. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirms 1,243 cases for the year. The number of states reporting sick individuals stands at 31. The majority of those were among people who weren't vaccinated. More than 75% of cases were linked to outbreaks in New York. And your help matters here on 12. And a new drug treatment for advanced prostate cancer is showing promise. The experimental treatment involves a drug already used to treat other cancers. It appears to be improving survival rates for men with advanced prostate cancer that is spreading and resistant to hormone levels. It's the second most common cancer among American men. It's sold under the brand name Lynparza. The manufacturer hopes to get the drug approved for prostate cancer as soon as possible.
Marine Park, you're watching News 12 Brooklyn, as local news gets.